Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today we're talking Courtiers. You guys, we are on chapter 13, Wild About Harry, and we are picking up at the royal pain in the wedding. We are going to get into it today because, this stuff gets juicy, and I'm here for it, and I'm excited to talk about it. But first, I want to point you toward Patreon. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. I'm going to be thanking my executive producers later in the video, so check that out. If you want to become an executive producer, you can do it right there on Patreon. But without further ado, let's get into, ready? Courtiers! I hope you can hear the glee in my voice. I am so excited to be here today and to be talking Courtiers with you guys because we got some juicy stuff to get into. The staff bullying starts to rear its ugly head. Meghan starts to rear her ugly head. So let's get into this. Okay, so like I said, we picked up on chapter 13. Some of you guys like to follow along. I'm actually on page 266, if that helps. All right, so it's the months leading up to Harry and Meghan's wedding. Buckingham Palace had stretched out the hand of friendship to Meghan. The Queen had requested that Lord Chamberlain, I just like to say that, Lord Chamberlain, Earl Peel, the most senior figure in the household, the Queen had directed him, hey, how about you go help Harry and Meghan and explain to Meghan how the palace worked. So again, pointing out how the whole palace was there and helping Meghan and bending over backwards however they could to make her feel comfortable. Woo, you guys, we're going to get into it. I know, I can feel it. I'm excited. On the Queen's behest, I went and talked to them about the workings of Buckingham Palace and the system as best I could. This is, of course, Lord Chamberlain saying this, Earl Peel, that they showed considerable interest, and she asked some very apt questions. She was very on the ball. So things started out nice. But Valentine is very quick to point out these well-intentioned gestures, that the palace was doing for them were not being reciprocated. They brought up that the relations between Meghan and the staff at Kensington Palace were already beginning to fray, even before she and Harry got married. In late 2017, after the announcement of the engagement, a senior aide discreetly raised with the couple the difficulties caused by their treatment of staff. So note, it's both Harry and Meghan being complete asshats to the staff. People needed to be treated well and with some understanding, even when they were not performing to Harry and Meghan's standards, they suggested. Meghan, with her infamous reply, "It's not my job to coddle people." Nice, huh? Really warm and nice person. Definitely interested in staying long term, right? Meghan wasn't dealing with she wasn't dealing with the junior staff, people that William, Catherine, and even Harry previously had been totally fine working with. Meghan insisted that it had to be senior staff. She didn't want anybody down the pecking order, even though it was a small office, and she wasn't treating anybody with respect. According to Valentine, she would, quote, take it as an insult if somebody more junior were to try to work with her, heaven forbid. I will give Valentine credit here because he tries to give her the benefit of the doubt. He explains that organizing any wedding is stressful, of course, and perhaps a royal wedding is more stressful than most. But Harry and Meghan's proved to be particularly challenging. There were rows about scheduling, rows about wedding announcements, rows about the gospel choir. Most famously of all, there's a row about the tiara. Of course, we remember that. It was the Queen's dresser, Angela Kelly, and how they acted like petulant children. They spoke harshly, and it did not go well. Around the same time, Meghan spoke particularly harshly at a meeting to a young female member of the team. Meghan took this work she had been working on and pulled her plans to shreds in front of her colleagues. So she really upset this woman. And then The lady tried to explain how hard it would be to implement a new plan, and Meghan's response, quote, "Don't worry. If there was literally anyone else I could ask to do this, I would be asking them instead of you." Holy crap. I mean, awful, awful person. It makes me smile with glee with all the crap she's taken now and that everybody's found out what a horrible monster she is. Apparently later, Prince William had heard of some of the treatment and went to that woman and asked if she was okay. He said, "I hope you're okay. You're doing a really good job." She promptly burst into tears. Oh my God. I love Prince William so much. I feel for this woman. That is a terrible situation to be in. And it puts Prince William in an awful situation. And he's such a nice guy. And I love them. Anyway, okay. Other members of the staff also came in under fire. Sometimes both from Harry and Meghan. The journalist Robert Johnson recounted how Harry became, quote, petulant and short-tempered. We've heard that before. With members of staff during the preparations for the wedding. This is where he yelled, "What Meghan wants, she gets." I always heard it as "what Meghan wants, Meghan gets," but Valentine is saying, "What Meghan wants, she gets." Once, when Meghan felt she had been let down over an issue that was worrying her, she rang repeatedly when a staffer was out for dinner on Friday night. Quote, "Every 10 minutes, I had to go outside to be screamed at by her and Harry. It was, quote, 'I can't believe you've done this. You've let me down. What were you thinking?' It went on for a couple of hours. My God, she's Devil Wears Prada." The calls started again the next morning and continued, quote, "for days," the staffer said. "You could not physically escape them. There were no lines nor boundaries. It was last thing at night, first thing in the morning. Not to mention the 5 a.m. emails from Meghan. Relations between the couple and some of the senior staff became so fractious that Miguel Head, William's private secretary, had to step in to help keep the peace. My God. So not only do you have to put up with this horrible woman, these horrible people, Harry and Meghan, but you have to deal with their phone calls and their emails. And remember, in one of the interviews that Harry gave, he spun it as, so what? She was sending emails at 5 a.m. No. He's downplaying it. She sounds like a monster. And yet, even through all of this, her being awful to the staff, her and Harry, being awful to the staff, there were still people such as that Earl Peel I was telling you about, as well as David Manning and Miguel Head and others who were trying to help and trying to think creatively about the opportunities that were presented by her joining the royal family. There is, however, another way of looking at things, and this is where I love Valentine Lowe. He was so astute at pointing out, listen, everybody was doing everything for her, but there's another way of seeing this, which is nothing was ever going to be good enough. She was looking for examples of us failing her from the beginning. This is according to one former staffer. Quote, we were having to prove that the institution would bend over backwards to make her happy. That wasn't what she wanted. She wanted to be rejected. You guys, I thought that was such an interesting point. So this whole time, I mean, she's a terrible person, but I'm saying, that's just so interesting. Obviously, we've thought she's playing this from the beginning, but I didn't even think about it from that angle as far as mistreatment of staff. It sounds like it was just for funsies, but also trying to get rid of the ones that were actually trying to help her and being able to claim that nothing was making her happy and nothing was what she wanted, and she wanted to be rejected on her request so that way she'd have something else to complain about. Wow. I just thought that was a really interesting point by Valentine Lowe there. I thought that was just crazy. Okay, so around this time, we start to hear about Samantha Cohen. Samantha Cohen was already on her way out. She was the Queen's former assistant private secretary. She was going to be leaving, but then the Queen talked to her and said, hey, will you stay on for 6 months, try to help out the couple, and be their interim private secretary. So it wasn't an actual U-turn about not going. It was a sharp change of course for Cohen, who, like I say, had already handed in her notice at Buckingham Palace. It was a whole thing with Christopher Geit. She was going to be leaving, but she was like, okay. Apparently, she was very well respected. She was intensely loyal to the Queen, for whom she had worked since 2001. First in the press office, rising to become the communications secretary before moving over to the private office. So she had 17 years in at the palace, and the Queen had a high regard for her and asked her to stay on to please help Harry and Meghan, Hank and Skank, Harold and Fraud. This was not the Queen imposing her own person on the newlyweds. Instead, it was the Queen coming to the rescue by persuading one of the most valued members of staff to guide them through their first 6 months or so of married life. Cohen was one of the most popular and well-regarded members of the Queen's household. And you can imagine where we're headed with this. Things go completely smoothly, right? So Sam, as everybody called her, arrived in Kensington Palace with one great advantage. Harry knew her well already, as did William, and they were very fond of her. The feeling was reciprocated. Even though she was not planning to stay beyond the spring of 2019, the ever-loyal Cohen was determined to make her new job work. Harry was initially very enthusiastic, is the quote, said a source. Sam was trying to make it happen, but she was soon to discover that making Harry and Meghan happy was a bigger challenge than she had anticipated. So autumn 2018 rolls around, right? Dumb and Dumber were supposed to go on this official trip to Australia, Fiji, New Zealand, Tonga. We know it. All right, Knopf was supposed to go with them. He wasn't able to go because he broke his collarbone. The quote here that I love is that Knopf was, quote, 10,000 miles away when he finally blew up his relationship with Harry and Meghan. For the past few months, Knopf had been growing increasingly concerned about how staff were being treated by Meghan, and Harry too. That's the quote from the book. The issue had been brought into focus by the departure of Meghan's PA, Melissa Tubati. So she had been with the palace 6 months. Tubati was the second PA to leave after Meghan's arrival. A source told the paper, quote, her job was highly pressurized and in the end it became too much. She put up with quite a lot. Meghan put a lot of demands on her and ended up with her in tears. Melissa is a total professional and fantastic at her job, but things came to a head and it was easier for them to both go their separate ways. Okay. Here's why this is interesting. This whole thing centered on the free gifts that some companies would send to Meghan. Remember, we talked about this. I find it so interesting. So according to the book, deliveries were constantly arriving at Kensington Palace. Clothes, jewelries, candles. It was absolutely nonstop, said a source. Tubati was trying to follow the household rules about members of the royal family cannot accept freebies from commercial organizations. Her approach did not go down well with Meghan. She does what she wants. She's Cartman. I do what I want. Privacy. We want privacy. So the Sun alleged that Meghan's rows with Kensington Palace staff over fashion freebies began after she was first unveiled as Harry's girlfriend. The paper quoted a source saying, as an actress, it was perfectly acceptable, but she had to be told it was not the done thing for a royal. According to the author, Tina Brown, Meghan's taste for luxury freebies dated back to her days as an actress, when she wrote the blog The Tig. She, quote, won a reputation among the marketers of luxury brands for being warmly interested in receiving bags of designer swag, wrote Brown. So I love that they addressed that. She warmly accepted it, but she was not warm to her staff. She sounds awful. The reports of Tubati's departure came around the same time as talk of the feud between Meghan and Kate, and the allegations that Kate had been reduced to tears over that bridesmaid's fitting, the dress thing, Princess Charlotte. That particular allegation would become a long-standing source of grievance for Meghan, I bet it did, who would later claim that it was Kate who made her cry. The steady trickle of stories about staff leaving and Meghan's demands added up to a narrative that did not reflect well on Meghan. She was difficult. She was not nice to her staff, and she was not nice to Kate. The quote is, she did not like Kate. I'm saying she was not nice to Kate. Newspapers began to call her Duchess Difficult. She became increasingly concerned about these stories and staff departures. Meghan's supporters tried to defend her. I don't understand how you defend that. They're still trying to defend her on the most flimsy of excuses, suggesting that she was, quote, her favorite, the victim of, quote, racism or sexism or both, all the isms she loves to cling on to. Who were her greatest cheerleaders at the time? Omid Scobie. And they also listed Carolyn Durand, who was the co-author of Finding Freedom. So imagine that. These two who were making money off of the situation were coming to Meghan's defense. They quoted a friend of the Duchess, which I don't believe they exist, as saying, the Duchess different. That's what people had a problem with. She's the easiest person in the world to work with. I don't think so. Even if you don't believe this is true, I would say the high rate of staff turnover would kind of be a red flag for you to say, hey, maybe she isn't the easiest person to work with. Hey, maybe some of the stories might be true that she's Duchess Difficult, right? Okay, 26th of October that year, on a day when Harry and Meghan were flying back from Tonga to Sydney for the last day of the Invictus Games, Knopf ended up writing an email to his boss, Simon Case, who was William's private secretary. He said that he had spoken to the head of HR for the palace about some, quote, very serious problems concerning Meghan's behavior. I'm going to read you what he wrote because they didn't include this in Revenge that I can recall, and I found this fascinating. Here we go. I am very concerned that the Duchess was able to bully 2 PAs out of the household in the past year. The Duchess seems intent on always having someone in her sights. She's bullying X, the name was withheld, and seeking to undermine her confidence. We've had report after report of people who have witnessed unacceptable behavior towards X, despite the universal views from her colleagues that she's leading talent within the household who is delivering first-rate work. So that's the quote from the book. Now, this thing I'm showing you on the screen has since come out this was from Daily Mail. So this is showing that Knopf sent the email to William's private secretary, and it sounds like they were very concerned about the situation. It was very serious. Knopf says that he remains concerned that nothing will be done. I question if the household policy on bullying and harassment applies to principals. Knopf went on to say that during the tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, all that stuff, the bullying was still going on. He was in daily contact with the staff who were reporting it was, quote, very challenging and was made worse by behavior of the Duchess. He also expressed concerns about his own standing and suggested that even Samantha Cohen could be struggling to cope. Wow. So remember, in Revenge, it was reported that things got so bad, this is allegedly where the tea throwing incident happened, and that she required that her friend Jessica Mulroney be flown out and her husband, and together they made things even worse for the staff. Valentine goes on to say that when the Times reported the bullying accusations 2.5 years later, a number of sources came forward to back up Knopf's claims. 2 senior members of staff claimed that they were bullied by the Duchess. Another aide claimed that their treatment felt, quote, like emotional cruelty and manipulation, which I guess could also be called bullying. So Valentine goes on to say, of course, that the Duchess of Sussex absolutely denies ever doing that. Her solicitor, so again, somebody she was paying, said, quote, knowing her as I do, I can't believe she would ever do that. It just doesn't match my experience with her. Sorry, my experience of her at all. Well, the same could be said. Some people said that about Weinstein, right? I mean, same with Bill Cosby, right? There's a million allegations, and yet there's always going to be somebody that's like, that's not my experience with them. Well, it doesn't negate all the other experiences people had with them. That's what drives me absolutely bonkers here. These two idiots, Omid and Caroline, were so busy trying to kiss her ass. They were saying things like, oh, it's to do with cultural differences. They even said in Finding Freedom, quote, Americans can be much more direct. And that often doesn't sit well in a more refined institution of the monarchy. Bullshit. I'm American. I can speak to this. Yes, we can be direct. But this is some weak ass shit to blame being American on this. That's bullshit. There's no way. We know how to treat people. Everybody knows how to treat somebody regardless. Even if your language is different, you know how to treat somebody. And trying to rest it on being a brash American is just total nonsense. And if we are going to go that route, then what's this clown's excuse, huh? He's British. Sounds like he was horrendous to the staff as well. So what are we going to blame that on? Whose fault is it now? Because it's never their own. You guys, this is where I'm ending this. You can sense the frustration. We still have a little bit more to go with this chapter, and then we'll get into chapter 14, exit plans. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed this recap. I hope you're enjoying it as well. In case you're new, well, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But we're going to go through Courtiers, and then we're going to hit Lady C's book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. I am so excited. I had a lot of comments saying that you're excited too. So can't wait to dive into that. I want to thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. All the love and support. It means the whole wide world to me. Definitely, I still have the merch going on, so check that out. We have Recollections May Vary, Hank and Skank. Still fits perfectly. Make it make sense, right? That could so apply to well, that would apply to what we were just talking about. Oh, she's American. It's a cultural difference. Bullshit. Anyway, so check out the merch. I'll put the link somewhere in the comments or in the, description or something like that. So find that. And then check out Patreon, patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps, which brings me to my lovely executive producers, which you can also become on patreon.com. So I want to shout out and say a big thank you to Kristen, to Linda, thank you Melissa, thank you Paige, thank you Teresa, thank you to Mary, thank you Amy, thank you Mr. K, thank you to Kay, thank you Shauna, thank you Brenda, thank you Aaron and Frank, thank you Kristen, thank you Ann M, thank you Amanda, thank you Ann H, thank you Karen, thank you Corey, thank you Kay King, thank you, Glynis. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Dewey. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Adair. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Annette. And thank you, Barb G. I really appreciate you. If you've signed up recently, I will get your name and a shout out coming up very soon. Thank you all so much for all the love and support. Thank you for being here. Make sure you're subscribed. I hope you have just the best day, and I can't wait to talk more about this book. Lots to talk about. All right, I will talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.